Hey everybody, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Yes, I am stretching. It has been a long and adventuresome day, but part of the fun today when I get done with work is that I'm going to go home and my little orange cat, Tormund, is going to come walking up like he doesn't care, but he does care because he always comes walking up. And he's going to rub his chin against my chin on both sides. And he's going to sit in my lap for a real long time. He's going to flip over and he's going to stretch his little baby paws out over his head. I'm going to scratch his little white vest spot right under his chin. He's going to lean back. I just love this kitten. He's the one that was in a video a year or two back or whatever over on the YouTube channel. I think he's great. And I remember a while back, he got his first ever dose of snow. And he's an adventuresome cat. You know, he wants to go do things and wants to be outside. And we got a big snow and I opened the door and he'd never seen snow before. And he's like, let me go. I'm like, okay. And I put him down. I took like 4 big, bold Conor McGregor steps out into the snow and then realized what was happening. And all of a sudden, he couldn't get all 4 of his paws off the ground at once. And he was like, the courage is out of me, Dad. The courage is out of me. Come get me. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm coming, buddy. And as I sympathetically scooped him up and took him back inside, he's looking over my shoulder at that snow with this expression of horror and revulsion at this white substance that had made him betray his otherwise normal state of bravery. And I feel like we get that kind of the courage has gone out of you moment. You made a bold move, but that bold move only lasted for a second until the reality of the situation sets in kind of thing in Matthew chapter 14. After Peter does his practical confession of Christ. I know the verbal confession is coming up in a couple of chapters, but Matthew up till this point, the halfway point of the book has been like, well, okay, I'm kind of nudging you all as the readers to be like, who is this guy? Who do you think he is? I mean, the hints are pretty thick. Who do you think? What do you make of it? And Peter is finally the one who by his actions acknowledges, like, this is the maker and sustainer of all things. This is clearly, obviously, your God. I see who you are. It's very evident to me, and I'm so sure of it that I'm willing to walk out of a boat in the middle of a storm if you just say it's a good idea. And so he throws out this proposition in Matthew 14:28, and Jesus gives him the one-word answer, come. And so picking it up there, Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, Lord, save me. And the courage went out of him. And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You have little faith, he said. Why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down, and those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. So there we get the completion of this profession of faith. All right, now they get it. Once again, in the last storm on the sea in Matthew chapter 8, they were like, who is this? And then the demons, one anecdote later, say, what do you want with us, Son of God? Now we're out in a boat again. We have another one of these things. And the question is even more pregnant. Who is this? The disciples all see it now. Truly, you are the Son of God. So on the one hand, that's obviously a very nifty bit of literary symmetry. But on the other hand, I mean, dang. Okay, I guess we're just going with this for the second half of the book. We've hit the halfway point, and from here on out, we're going to operate under the assumption that Jesus is, in fact, the Son of God. And there's a lot more thought and conversation that has to happen about that over the next couple of chapters. But that is where we're going from here. Now, whether somebody reads this book and is like, I definitely buy that, or whether somebody is at this point and they're like, I wasn't in the boat. I didn't see any of these miracles. I don't know. I'm open to this being something supernatural, maybe even what they claim, God in the flesh, but I need to ride this out. Well, the way Matthew is structured, it looks like Matthew is cool with you not necessarily being on board just yet either. But this is a way to use the narrative flow and the point of view character's opinion, their read on things, to help nurture you along and to help set what the next set of operating assumptions are going to be moving forward. So I think that's what we get here. But back to Peter. This guy has his Tormund the cat moment where he's like, I'm ready to share this whole new world with you. And he steps out of the boat and it works okay for a second. And what must that second have been like? I mean, my cat had never been around snow before. He gets a pass for not knowing what to do or how to put his feet on that substance. But you and I are pretty brushed up on what happens when you walk on water. You sink. And if you're a little bit buoyant, you sink all the way down to like the 95% level, and your face maybe can be propped up above the water. But nobody just floats. I mean, his willingness to step out of that boat onto that substance was in defiance of every empirical, physical bit of data that he had casually gathered over an entire lifetime of being around water, that can't work, but that is how sure in the moment Peter was. Think about that level of certainty. How many things have you ever been that sure of, let alone something beyond the physical and into the abstract or even supernatural? This is a freakish moment, and as quickly as it happened, it is also over. All of that empirical evidence takes over. You're no longer in contact with the boat, which feels relatively solid and certain and familiar. Then it doesn't work. I don't even know what to make of the fact that it worked in the first place. I can't quantify this. I have no category for this in my brain. This is one of the parts of the Bible where you get to it and you're just like, dang, I think I see the spiritual point here. I just can't imagine what it actually would have looked like while it was going on. And so, of course, he starts to sink. But lest we get on our high horses and be like, oh, Peter, you are just not good at Christianity. You are always the one who does everything wrong. And if I took a couple steps on water, I'd be like, if I could take 2, I could take 4. I'm just going to make it out to Jesus like the little kid who's learning to swim. Come on, come to me, come to me, come to me. I wonder if Jesus was backing up a little bit and making that gesture with his hands to see if he could get Peter to walk further. It's more fun to imagine it that way. But no, lest we get after Peter here and be like, you big idiot. Let's think about what just happened. So now he's sinking in the water, and there's another test of faith here that is much more subtle, but that I think makes Peter actually look pretty dang good. You got to figure at this point, he's equidistant between 2 things. One is a boat, and it's made of wood. It's sturdy. He's sailed in it for his whole life. He knows how it works. He has friends in there, and he knows that his friends are real. The other thing that he's equidistant from is some sort of phantasm, some sort of ghost, some sort of illusion. The other thing that he's got close to him at his disposal here is a dude walking on the water out in the middle of a stormy sea. And he picks the dude walking on the water. I don't know about you, but I would have gone for the boat. And I'm like a Christian, I hope, I think. I mean, it seems like I definitely am. I feels like I'm a Christian for sure. But still, in that moment of where is your heart and your treasure actually at, I think most people are going to go for the boat, but Peter didn't. Like, okay, maybe Peter isn't at the point where he is singularly and uniquely focused on Jesus all the time. But at the same time, when push came to shove and we figure out where his treasure is, where his heart is, where his hope is, well, he calls out to Jesus, not to the guys on the boat. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and he began to sink, understandable, and he cried out, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. I think that's a pretty neat moment, and there's a bajillion spiritual metaphors and devotional points that can easily be made here about the providence of God and God's care for the individual, and you're smart. You can see this image on the page and take to heart what is there. In a way, that gesture is a metaphor for everything about the soteriology, that is the theology of salvation that we see in the New Testament. None of it is about you. All of it is at the power and behest and grace of God. It's his choice. Nobody gets to boast about this. Nobody gets to own the fact that salvation happened. God owns salvation. And this helpless, impossible situation Peter is in is a metaphor for the helpless, impossible situation that people are in because of our total depravity and complete deadness spiritually apart from God, our complete guilt before the perfect law and perfect standards of a perfect God. And if there is going to be any redeeming that occurs in that kind of an equation, it's going to be the perfect reaching down into the imperfect, the complete reaching down into the incomplete, the flawless reaching down into the broken and failed to resolve the crisis. There's no amount of flailing and thrashing around that was going to make Peter, by his own merits, able to walk on water. He was dead in the water. See what I did there is like a pun. And then Jesus steps into the situation, reaches out by his own volition, and resolves the situation. Now, some of you who are really keen to debate the whole election free will thing might look at this and be like, well, it was Jesus who reached out. And others might be like, well, it was Peter who called out first, though I don't really think this is the passage we're supposed to look at to resolve that natural and necessary theological tension between the work of an infinite God and the flailing of finite people. But I do think, as I mentioned, there's a pretty cool metaphor here for the basics of the work of God and role of God and the work of people and role of people, that work being a position of need, that is a metaphor for the whole grand picture of salvation that we get in the teachings of Jesus and in the New Testament in general. But then, and I guess we'll wrap it up here, Jesus says, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" I kind of expected the first time I read this to be like, dang, dude, not bad. Like, walking on water is super hard for people, and you got a few steps. I think that's something we can build off of. Great job. All right, chin up, buddy. All right, let's get in this boat over here. But instead, Jesus' expectation was that, nah, you could have done more. Like, if you really understood what was going on in this moment, you could have done more. I don't get that. I'm not going to pretend to get that. I'm not going to create some false spiritual allegory that I can't defend to tell you what to do. That's not the deal that we have together anyway. Instead, I'll just say what I think we can clearly say from the text. Jesus knows that that first step was a demonstration of remarkable faith, and that second or third step that started to wobble was a demonstration of not faith. And further, Jesus knows, as promised in the missional discourse of chapter 10, that Peter is going to face things that are going to test him and push him a lot harder than a chaotic sea and the risk of drowning. And so Jesus is investing in that faith and that clarity of Peter, because Peter's been picked to play a pretty important role on a pretty important team with a pretty important task in this whole kingdom agenda thing that Jesus has. We have just a little bit more to look at here in this particular scene before we're on to the beginning of chapter 15, which we will get to this week, which is going to be kind of fun. And that's a wrap. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.